Open the meeting of the planning board on April 9th, 2023. The first thing to do is the approval of previous minutes.
We don't have the minutes, do we?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
Oh, we do?
This time we do.
Oh, did I do them?
We do.
My memory's so
I
short.
was ready.
Well, 2 seconds.
Well,
I make a motion, we
meetings
accept
of
the
March
minutes.
22 and March 29.
No, April 11th and 12th.
Well, that's what this one says.
Make a motion, we accept the minutes. for
Do I have a
both days.
second? Second. We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bob, you're the wrong agenda.
No, just for the record, they are the April 11th and
Yes.
April 20th, 2000.
April 11th and April 20th, sorry. I'm reading the wrong things here.
I didn't hear who
Right
seconded.
now, we have a presentation tonight, as I understand it, it's concerning the new elementary school. And if you remember back when we went over the plans for the elementary school, we approved an inordinate, what we thought at that time was an inordinate amount of parking spaces. Well, it just so happens, as the academic and educational programs improve, the superintendent sees fit to hire more teachers, and he has the money to do so. So now we don't have enough parking places. So Dan Delaney is here from Fuss and O'Neill, and he's the guy that's gonna tell us about the changes to the parking lot. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Acting Chairman.
Thank you.
So, yeah, as Bob said, my name's Dan Delaney. I'm Vice President with Fuss O'Neill, and basically, let me just go right up to the screen so you can see. So this is the existing conditions plan, or the current plan of the school. So, can't look up there and see the same time. There we go. So what we're here before you, and I know you kind of explained the need behind the proposed request, but what we're requesting is a site plan amendment to add 22 parking spaces to the existing parking fields within the school. And there's kind of in two distinct locations, which I'll show you in a second. It'll be, I'll zoom in to show you. So there's 8 spaces. If you're looking at the school now, north is straight up, and the school's here. The way the sheets are cut off, peeling off to the left here is the connection over to the high school and middle school. This is the access road coming up from Pearl. And so the main entrance is right here. So you have this parking field on this side, and then the large parking field straight out from the entrance if you've been up there. And then there is another small lot here, which we aren't proposing to touch. Everybody can see my cursor? Okay.
Yep.
So there's 2 areas where they're proposing to add the parking. So on this parking field, actually that's our site prep plan. This is the easiest way to see it. So you can see the striped areas here. So what we're proposing to do is extend the parking, 2 parking spaces at the end of each parking aisle into the existing parking islands. Right now, there's larger parking islands in these areas. So we're just literally just adding 2 spaces in each one, so for a total of 8 spaces in this location. And then if you zoom out, go back over to the main entrance and the large parking field here, you have the access road, which goes to the west of the parking field. And what we're proposing to do in this location is to add 14 parallel parking spaces along the access road in this location.
Oh, okay.
So both of these proposals were kind of specifically designed with a couple ideas in mind to, minimally invasive and won't require any change to the storm drainage or the storm drainage system. They won't be moving any light poles or anything like that. That's obviously, this is already in service, so we're trying to minimize any impacts that would result from that. So both of these areas would just be a matter of removing and resetting curb, and then adding pavement and blending it in. We did tweak the grades a little bit just to make sure we had positive drainage. There are catch basins there now, so we did tweak the drainage or the grading a little bit just to make sure in those areas we maintain the same drainage patterns. In this area here, the road is crowned, so we are going to maintain this as the gutter. So if you imagine the road being crowned, the parking spaces will come back up at about 2%. So the water will stay in that gutter area and not go up against the curb, just so we can, maintain the existing storm basins that are there and not have to adjust the storm drainage. So there was provided with the application a memo that summarizes any of the changes, and then the changes to the stormwater system. Obviously, although in the grand scheme of things this doesn't look like much, it is an addition of a few thousand square feet of impervious area to the site. So we reran the calculations, and those are provided in this memorandum dated April 19th, where we verified that the storm drainage system will still meet the town's regulations, where there'll be no net change in peak discharge for any of the design storms. And then the last appendices also show that the water quality volumes and the water quality, groundwater recharge, water quality volume and groundwater recharge are maintained, which are based on the amount of impervious. So if you increase the impervious, you have to make sure that you're still providing enough of those two things on site. Because the original design was, on the conservative side, there's no necessary changes to any of the existing stormwater system to accommodate this work. So in a nutshell, that is what's being proposed. If anybody has any questions, or if you want me to zoom in a little further on the screen, I'd be happy to do that. But happy to take any questions.
You want to blow it up to look at it some more?
No, I just want to, the existing drainage, how's that working so far? Any problems this year?
I'm not aware of any problems. No, I know that there has been, out in the back of the site where they're still working, there's been some erosion issues that I know are ongoing, but I know that that's something that they're working with. I know the landscape architect's been out working on some of the issues in that area with, I think there's some play equipment and things out there that they're actively working on. So that's an area that, I know is still under construction. So there has been some erosion issues, but my understanding is the main stormwater basins and the stormwater system has been performing as we intended.
Bob, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any. Pretty self-explanatory.
It is.
Yeah.
Bob?
I did review the package that Fuss and O'Neill had submitted. The stormwater calculations that were provided do demonstrate that
Yeah.
while there is an increase in runoff from the parking areas, the system as designed had extra capacity if you look at it that way. So they're fine. The system functions still below what would be allowable. So they're good there. Trevor and I did go out and take a look at the site to look at the areas where they're proposing new parking. A couple of topics kind of came up that we discussed while we were out there was the existing grading. The ends of those islands look like they were graded slightly different from the plans, where there's actually, I want to say the middle island is mounded up grade-wise a little bit more than what the proposed contours would have shown.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little concern about the grading around within the island when you cut in for those spaces, just what the grade's gonna end up being. I don't know if the plans reflect the as-built grades, or if it's just, they were the existing, called proposed grades. But that island in particular, I think.
That's this one here.
Yeah, you might wanna take a look at, just grade-wise, cause it may end up being a grade too steep, between the two parking areas. Minor comment, but just if you're relying on what the proposed was versus what's out there today, I'd have a look at that.
I know we had some as-built information on the structures and the pavement, but I don't know about you're talking about the earthwork.
Yeah, so the earthwork in that particular line where you get the 172, 173, call them existing contours, I think it's higher than that. I think they mounded it up and landscaped it a little bit. Because we were standing there looking at it saying, wow, you're really gonna have to cut into this. So I think that's worth having a look at.
Sure.
Minor in nature, but I don't want the contractor to get out there and say, you know, I'm gonna build a wall here or something to make these grades work. Trevor and I also looked at, I guess, the backing out turning movements of cars parked in those spots. And you're gonna end up with, not backing way out into the main driveway that connects those lots, just a little bit tighter than what it is under the approved design. But the more I thought through it, I think, you know, if it's teachers, my concern would be during, you know, busy hours, cars coming in, buses coming in, lots of traffic on site. I wouldn't want to see those cars backing out into the driveway, but reality is probably it's teachers or school staff that will be leaving before and after.
Right before the rush.
Yeah, yeah. So while we talked about it, I don't think it's a big issue. And then the other thing was those light poles along the main driveway.
Yeah, where the parallel parking's gonna be. The light poles look like, I'm not sure how wide these parking spaces are, but it didn't look like you had the width for a standard parking spot with the position.
We were
of the
gonna
light.
extend that 6 feet with, and then restripe the road, so you'd have two 11-foot aisles and then you'd have the 8-foot width.
Oh, so you're pulling some width from the driveway?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the idea was to shave so go from 12-foot drive aisles to 11, and then only kick it out 6 feet instead of the 8. And that would get us just inside those poles, so you wouldn't have an issue.
I think you're still gonna have issues with people hitting them if they're that close to the curb in their parallel parking there, but that's
Okay.
a chance you're gonna take. Yeah, I think Rob brought most of my concerns. The backing up into the travel lane at the ends of the islands. Is there a standard that you actually engineer to when it comes to that type of parking?
For this area here?
Yeah, when you design those islands, I mean, is there a standard length?
Not typically if it's within a parking field. If that was a roadway,
Yeah.
then you'd want to stay a full car length away. But even if it was, if it was a Home Depot or, Market Basket or something, if it's within the parking field, you have as narrow as a 3 to 5 foot island in a 90-degree. With these spaces, I think you're still going to be close pulling out. See, I think the distance from here, say out to the edge, is about 15 feet if you really came clear. So it's close, but I think there's enough room there where you wouldn't directly cause a conflict.
Just one other comment, and I know I mentioned it to Mark earlier. When Rob and I were there were a lot of empty parking spots in pretty much every lot that we went to. It could have been the time of day,
What time was it roughly?
Was it 10:30 in the morning?
10-ish,
Yeah, 10ish in the morning.
During the week?
Yeah. But it just happened, it was just funny that, we were there, I'm like, look at all the empty spots.
I've been by there and the place is full.
Yeah, well, that's what Mark had mentioned earlier. So I think it might have probably just the time and the day that we happened to be there.
It's just odd.
Can you speak to that at all, or as far as?
Well, as Mr. Schwartz can attest to being on the finance committee for the schools, we've had a lot of absences by the teachers and some of the staff.
Yeah,
Those expense lines have gone up, so with the nicer weather, there's a little more absences. You may have just caught one of those days. But as I related to Trevor the other day, I had asked some of the cars, there were 2 spots available in the lot, and they were parking on the street, on that side street where we're looking to put in those 14 spots. And we really don't want to be blocking that, because then you're going to force a car into the wrong lane. Fire trucks coming by, anything like that, any emergency vehicles, it's just not good. But especially in the beginning of the year when everyone was there all the time, we had on average probably about 10, 12 cars parking on the street, blocking one whole lane. And that was the genesis of this. So the MSBA, being excellent stewards of your tax dollars, did not want us to create too much parking. When we designed this, or started designing this some 6 years ago or more, we had about 150, 155 staff at the 2 schools combined. As Bob had mentioned, Mr. Schwartz mentioned, the Student Opportunity Act has come into reality. We received more money, and over the past couple of years, we've added about 34 staff just at the elementary school. So that 155 is now 189. Then when you account for the custodial staff, the outsourced custodial staff, the outsourced school lunch folks, we are, if everyone shows up, we have no parking. And then if a parent wants to stop by, they're parking on the street somewhere. So that's really the genesis for trying to find as many parking spots with as little trouble as possible.
Dan, what's the total parking count with the 22 proposed?
It's a good question. It's about 220, I think.
Yeah.
Something like
It was,
that.
the original design was for 50 visitors and I think 150 staff. I don't know if I brought it, but, so it'd be about 220 instead of 200 even.
But then you take out the 4 spots that are for the electric vehicles, and then the other 7 spots for handicap, so you're losing almost a dozen in there. And we had some reserve spots for the intermittent staff, the district staff that visit the different schools. All those reserve spots are taken up by staff. So
And yeah, the MSBA is very, very tight, and like you mentioned, with what they will allow you to, or what they want you. They want you to minimize parking as much as possible.
Yeah.
And it is a tough balance, because you want to plan for the future and get as much as you can, but you also don't want to overbuild. So I know that was something we toyed with throughout the whole design. So.
Dan, can you focus in on the parallel parking area again, please?
Yeah.
So is there, focus back out, is there an ability, like Mr. Hawk just said, that people were parking along the roadway here? If this parking is put in, is there an ability for people to still park on the road at either end, outside of where the designated parking area is gonna be? And I guess my point was gonna be, if there is, maybe we should put signs out, no parking beyond this point. So like, I don't know, is
Pretty
that?
good idea.
Yeah, I see what you
Does that
No,
make-
the on-street parking would start right at that crosswalk area, and then it really wouldn't extend that far down.
There's really not much room here because this is sort of open,
Yeah.
and it starts right at the crosswalk. There's a little bit of room here, but it's in
Well,
the,
you know,
you might want to, I mean, if anything, you pop a
all the
sign.
other spaces are taken, they're just gonna stop wherever they are and park there.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just an idea.
The only time that might happen is if they do a, what do you call that, one of those open houses?
School function thing, yeah, open
Same
house.
day.
Yeah.
So I think they learned from that, because they tried that, and that was a disaster. Because if you have just enough spots for staff, there's 950, 975 kids at that school. So if you have everyone show up for an open house,
Yeah.
there's no room.
I know in my kids' school, they have a similar situation where the middle school and the elementary school are on the same campus, and they actually run a little shuttle bus on the open house nights between the two. There's a bunch of playing fields, so it's like a 4-minute ride back and forth, but that's,
Isn't it, yeah?
something you can do.
Like a ride.
Yeah. You get to ride the big yellow limousine again, so.
All right.
Any other questions or
I know they're
concerns?
talking about expanding for the future, but the thing's only been open for less than a year, and already we need to add on. That's not the future.
That's great news.
So I'm not too sure what you're gonna do.
We're doing something right.
So what is our plans in
We have
5
to
years,
build
6
another
years?
building.
Building another school? No more parking?
No, right now, we really don't accept school choice for the younger grades, because we
Yeah.
are
We're all
full.
full up.
We open it to the high school, that's when we lose a couple of morning tech and so forth, so we have the room. So, yeah, this school is full. And I don't believe we're gonna be, the Student Opportunity Act allowed us to right-size the district, so we were understaffed in certain areas, particularly special education. So, according to all parameters right now, we are right-sized. So this is what we should have for staff.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Sure.
So the board tonight really should determine whether they find this to be a minor or major modification to the original site plan. And,
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
so the board tonight should determine whether they find it to be a minor or a major modification to the original site plan approval. That's what is in front of you tonight. So after discussion and question and answering whether you feel this is a minor or a major modification.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Well, I
Sort of.
understand. Well, kind of. So what's the difference on our vote? Or was it gonna, if we say it's a
Well,
minor?
we
or
just
major?
identify it. A motion would be identified as a major or minor
Yeah.
and approved.
So a minor, a major approval would have a major impact on the site,
Right.
i.e.
I see.
increased stormwater,
I get it. I
retention
say yes.
means, and a minor would, and that would also trigger a whole public process all over again.
Okay.
Whereas a minor
Yep.
is a minor, it doesn't really have any significant impacts to the site itself.
Yeah, I
It can
understand.
be created without having any major.
Okay, yep, I understand.
Mr. Delaney's opening statement was they tried to design it with the least interruption
Yeah.
or screwing up the parking lot.
Okay, perfect.
Okay?
Okay, yep.
And a minor amendment would not trigger anything else other than the planning board voting and then allowing them to move forward with the project.
I make a mo,
Steve?
From what I see tonight, from what the city engineers proposed, well, within the limits as far as the runoff goes, and I consider it a minor change to the plans. at this
You were gonna make a motion,
make a motion, we classify it as a minor change?
and you motion to adopt as well, or accept.
Yes.
time. I second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I'm, let you know, because I'm on the school committee, I'm abstaining. Motion passed. Thank you, Mr. Delaney.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, everyone. Good to.
Like,
good to
I
see you.
understood that a lot better than the little dinky things that I got on my computer.
Always easier to talk somebody through it.
Trying to save trees, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah, I
tough,
understand.
these plans, yeah.
Rob Andrew, the judge, told me to say hello if I saw you.
I said hello, and I ordered some things.
Oh, there being nothing else, I move to adjourn.
Wait,
Well, you did it already.
I make a motion, we adjourn?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Pass.
And we're still on for the next meeting for
The 23rd?
2 weeks.
Yeah.
did you hear from the lawyer? The lawyer, is that?
I have not heard back from him yet confirming it, but
Yeah.
if anything changes, I'll let you know
Okay.
as soon as I hear.
That's gonna be a fun one, let me tell you.
Yeah, bring a sandwich.